Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the International Mandela Effect Conference Open Tables. Oh, wrong script. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the International Mandela Effect Conference 2024! It's so wonderful to see all you smiling faces out there as we have quite a few people that showed up this year. I am so excited to have this show on. Of course, you guys know who I am. For those that don't, I am Jerry Hicks. I have been a paranormal researcher for over 30 years, and I am the father of the International Mandela Effect Conference. Of course, I've got an amazing team of individuals that work with me, Miss Cynthia Sue Larson, Mr. Shane Robinson, and Mr. Christopher Anatra. So together we are the International Mandela Effect Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, we come together to put on these events for you guys, for the community. We are a 501c3 organization. That means we are a non-profit. None of us are making a penny off of anything that happens here. Speaking of, we do have merchandise if you want to support us over here in the corner. We've got the shirts, the stickers, the classic name badges from the very first conference we ever did. A couple of different goodies over there. So if you're interested in helping support IMEC, that is one way you can support us here on the ground in the room. Again, I must emphasize we are a non-for-profit. None of us make a single penny off of doing any of this. This all goes back into the community, all goes back in having you guys and your wonderful smiling faces here. And also our Patreons, of course. Our Patreon members really have helped fund the most brunt of this, as those monthly donations add up a lot, and we really appreciate our Patreon members. Remember, after every Open Tables show, we have the green screen room show that we've done just for the Open Table or the Patreon groups. So Patreon guys, come on over and make sure you get signed up. And it's not that much. It really isn't. Everybody gets access to the green room shows over on Patreon, and it's a great way to help support a charitable organization. Remember, any support you give is tax deductible. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two people as our keynote speaker this year. I am so very excited. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of these folks. Mrs. Liz Larson, Mr. Bill McKenna. My apologies, guys. Please don't murder me. As they share eye-opening stories of reality shifts. Maybe I can just shift into reality where I said it right. Time bending and personal Mandela effects. In this presentation, they offer a unique take on how the nervous system plays a role in creating these experiences, these adventures in consciousness. Miss Liz, based in Southern Oregon, Liz and her daughter Leah continue to develop Cogno movement materials. Bill McKenna, co-creator of the Cogno movement and author of The Only Lesson, has revolutionized brain rewiring by blending scientific expertise with spiritual insight. Liz is the dynamic co-creator also of Cogno movement, continuously driving his evolution through groundbreaking discoveries that reshape the nervous system and rewire the brain. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage Liz Larson and Bill McKenna.
So, look at this group. What a bunch of beautiful faces and souls. What amazing collaboration of people you guys put together. So beautiful. So, I guess we're first to say good morning. Good morning. We're so happy to be here. Bill, what do you think, our hosts?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, IMEC. Thank you, the entire team, for putting all this together. The Mandela Effect, we really see this mostly as outside of ourselves. And today, what we want to bring to the table is that you can actually be at the effector instead of the effectee of this. So there's a lot that we're going to share not only today, but also on Sunday in actual experience.
Yeah, that'll be the focus of our talk today, about how you can actually use the Mandela effect or timeline shift through your own nervous system, how you can create the effect. So Bill and I both have our own favorite Mandela effects. Mine happens to be what you see here. Fruit of the Loom. This one drives me especially nuts. Because in a past life, I was a commercial cake decorator and cake decorating instructor. At Thanksgiving time, this time of year, every year we would be tasked with putting the cornucopia on top of cakes, and we'd figure pipe it and draw it on. Well, it's a funny shape for an artist to make. You forget about how to do it. So every year, what did we do? I'm sure someone can guess. We went out in the store that I worked in. You could go out and there were clothes and underwear and stuff like that. We grabbed Fruit of the Loom packages. We had this projector that we could put the picture in and project it down onto the cake and remember how to use the cornucopia. The fruit would have been no problem. That I know what it looks like, but I don't know what a cornucopia looks like most of the time. So this one I know for sure. There was a cornucopia. When I heard that there wasn't, it blew my mind. In fact, this image right here, even with the cornucopia, none of that looks like the images we used back in the day. They were darker, deeper colors, more shaded. So that's my favorite and the one that continues to drive me a bit crazy. What's yours, Bill?
Well, upsetting to me as well as a, kid growing up in the 1960s, what you wore, the little white briefs and the T-shirts.
Tidy-whities, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I personally experienced this. But one of mine that was particularly upsetting was The Field of Dreams. Everybody watched that movie? If you build it, then... Yeah, no, he. So this one, just, Who is he? Who's he? There's a wonderful clip we have that to illustrate this. Basically, the evidence is there. So we'll roll that.
Hey, people will come, Ray. They come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have, and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
And they'll walk out to the bleachers. And sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines, where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game.
So he's talking about the people coming, to support him in his not losing his farm. And if you remember, he's sitting there and all the players come out of the cornfield. It's they in every possible way.
Right, and they had to come to help him save the farm. The people had to pay the money. That's why we found this clip, because it's talking about all of them that had to come. That was a little maddening too.
So anyway, I think everybody in this room knows kind of how we're feeling because you've experienced it. If you're in this room, you've experienced it. Now, I'm Bill McKenna. This is Liz Larson. We're the creators of the Cogno Movement System, where we have figured out, at least in our reality, that the nervous system is where we can create the change that affects the field of potential. And this field of potential can be everything from manifestations to timeline shifts to reality shifts. All of this is possible and within our control. It seems like it's not, but you can actually start to gain control over this. And that's what we want to share with you over the course of these next 3 days. Here is a picture of one of our trainings. This is some of our wonderful practitioners from around the globe. We get together a few times a year in person for that aspect of the training. and our wonderful bottom right corner, Leah Larson. Leah in the back. Leah, yeah. Twinkles. You can even just call her Twinkles. I think you'll get it when you see her. And the cognitive movement ball over there is just the tool, one of the tools we use that helps us to affect change.
And everyone who comes to our workshop on Sunday will get one of their own to take home. So
beautiful.
Here's the interesting thing. Bill and I, early on in creating this work, and we'll share that with you, started to see really big reality shifts in people's lives, timeline shifts. So I was talking with Cynthia one day, and I asked her, Cynthia, what's the difference between a Mandela effect and a timeline shift? And she said, a timeline shift is really more like a personal Mandela effect. And that made a lot of sense to me, because before, life was one way, concrete. You could prove it and you could point to the problem, right? But then minutes later, seconds later, it's different. Life looks completely different. People act different. They look different. Or the thing in your life that you wanted to change changes right now. So it becomes a personal Mandela effect. And for us, this became ultimately very, very fascinating. But first, I'll share with you, we each have had radical timeline shifts. For me, in my life, it happened all the time. It was like the world was shifting around me always. But I thought it was just me. I thought I was a little flaky, that I just couldn't keep track of stuff. So this key represents a story in my life that happened when I was around 10 years old. And my mom was incredibly overprotective. There was an alligator around every corner. I was definitely going to be kidnapped in our tiny little town. But I was in middle school, so I would have been 12 or 13. She finally let me ride my bike to school. This had been a dream of mine, as middle schoolers dream of things. And I was in charge of this bike chain, which became important because the girl that rode with me, and this was the only way I could go, was a neighborhood girl who was kind of my frenemy. You know what a frenemy is? Like half the time they're your best friend and the other half they hate your guts. This was this girl. So I had to be responsible for the chain for both of our bikes with a key. Now, because I had a propensity to lose things or timelines to shift, but I didn't know it then, this key became really important. So we ride our bikes and I put my key right on the top shelf on a little blue box. I can see it. It's right there. And in between classes, we changed classes. I would check for that key, like a hop. Is it there? Is it there? Because somewhere in my mind, I knew it would vanish. Like everything did, especially things that were important. So fast forward, end of the day, can anybody guess what happened to the key? It was missing. Right? It was missing. Of course, I'm embarrassed. The frenemy, she's going to be mad. We had to call the janitor. We scoured the locker. I asked him to look through the locker below, scoured it. The key was nowhere to be found. At the end of the year, when the bottom locker was empty, we scoured it again. The key had vanished. Now, what happened to the key? What I know now is that I was so focused. My system was so focused. My fight or flight was so up around that key being missing. Didn't want to be embarrassed. I didn't want to be the idiot who had to have the guy break the chain and all the things. That I created that shift. It was me. It was my nervous system. But back then, it was unexplainable.
And for me, my experience was so shocking. Never had this before happen in my life. It was one of the very first inklings of neurological change and how it would affect the environment around me. And there was a very, very simple cognitive movement exercise that at the very beginning I did. And I just told my life story as doing this while doing this neurological exercise with my eyes. And I didn't really think anything of it. 2 days later, I happened to be getting on the freeway. Now, I've lived in the same place for almost 30 years. When I get on the freeway, because I live in San Diego, it's typically north towards Los Angeles. Rarely do I go down towards the Mexico border. I'm always going north. Everything's north. So I've gotten on the freeway, shall we say, more than a few times, northbound. I'm got my blinker on. I'm sitting there at the stoplight. I look over kitty corner as I'm getting on the freeway, and I'm like, what the? There's a 7-Eleven there. There's a 7-Eleven, not only 7-Eleven, but it's a 7-Eleven with a gas station. And I would swear, if you gave me $1 million and said, what's on that corner? It's a Mossy Nissan. There's Mossy's a brand name of the car dealership. It's a Mossy Nissan, 100% for sure. This thing appears. My wife's there next to me. I was like, how long has that been there? She goes, all our lives. And I look over a little closer, and I'm like, the paint, how it fades, the paint fades. And I'm like, no, that's been there a long time, and right. I can't even believe it. I mean, I buy gas, right? I have always had gas cars. It's a gas station. I would use that. Anyway, this is the type of disturbing, your reality gets disturbed when you do the work, and the story changes. For me, the important thing here is my perspective. When I was doing the neurological exercise, I was telling the story of my life. And as I started telling the story of my life, I was like, actually, it didn't happen like that. This is actually really what's true. And then the field around of potential changed.
Absolutely. It's happening to us all the time because of the work we do. We are constantly changing the way our body, our field of potential is interacting with the world. So for us, landmarks change all the time. We know Cynthia's had this experience too, many times, but it's current, it's ongoing, in our neighborhoods, in Bill's neighborhood in Mission Beach. And the truth is that for Bill and I, the way we met, the way Cognitive Movement came together, it should never have happened. We have no business knowing each other. None at all. We had completely different lives. We had no people in common, right? It was through a series of reality shifts, changes, very specific changes that we made in intention and in our nervous systems before we knew it, that culminated in us meeting. And here's what we know. In some other reality, this work doesn't exist. It doesn't. The pieces didn't fall together, the individual pieces. But in this one, it had to. The modality had to emerge now, like so many others that are happening on the planet right now, to help people change the way their neural patterns are running so that they can change reality for themselves. Like all of you know, Cynthia says, and many of the speakers here will say, we're moving out of the fourth into the fifth dimension. We're moving out of the third for many. And that reality has to happen through changing vibration. So we knew this work had to come on the planet to help the people that we come in contact with change their vibration and become the humans that they needed to become, that you all need to become, to affect that change to a greater way. So Bill, share with everybody where you were on the planet before we met. What was happening in your life?
Well, shouldn't be here. Here I am. I was in high tech, quantum computer resistant cybersecurity. And I was involved in that world. There's no part of it that is woo-woo, in that environment. Everything is very scientific in that world. And it's not really a good look if you're a healer or woo-woo or psychic or whatever. But, there I was, I'm living kind of two lives. I have this one life, which I had all my life. My business life was in high tech. And I also had this other kind of, I don't know, another part of my life, which I really didn't share with people. I was interested in healing and psychic development and these sorts of things. I went through the Berkeley Psychic Institute, all their training and the whole thing, and became a teacher of theirs. But nobody knew, right? The people that were in knew, but no one else knew. So there I was. I went to a seminar. Maybe people have heard Burt Goldman, the guy who made quantum jumping. I ended up, I never heard of the guy, but somebody invited me, hey, come down to the seminar. I went down to his seminar, 3-day event, and I'm there, and I watched him. He said, has anybody got pain? Some lady raises her hand. She has fibromyalgia, and said, how long you had it? 27 years. It's a level 8. He goes, oh, okay. And he grabs a bottle of water. Okay, drink this. And the lady drinks it. Boom. Done. Gone. And I was, what did I just see? Anyway, I had a chance to check on it over that 3 days, and it had gone away. But this whole thing, I ended up taking back with me. And I was working, on the down low at this healing center every weekend. I was helping people, and I tried it out, and I was like, oh my God, it works. It works. So I was like, this is really powerful, and I wanted to get it out to the world, but I was like, yeah, if I go public on this one, not so good on my business end of things, So I was pretty conflicted. But I ended up contacting Gaia.com. Maybe some of you guys heard of that. It's a platform, a lot of users, a lot of subscribers on it. And anyway, I asked, if I could get on. But before I did that, before I asked if I could get on the program, I went through a real turmoil. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be public, right? I don't want to be the weirdo, and I don't want to disturb my business, right? So I had to make a fundamental shift in me. We now know that this is a neurological shift. I had a spontaneous neurological shift that allowed me to say, you know what? My body let go. I'm going to get this out to the world. And the feeling in me let go so that this information could get out there to the world. So I have no business being on Gaia. No business, right? When a platform like that, they want people who have influence. Zero influence. Liz said, I had no website. I had nothing. So anyway, I ended up, the decision went all the way up to the billionaire CEO of the company to have me on. And he said, yes. Huh. So I went on and I shared it all. So this is really a powerful part of the sequence of events. Liz actually saw the show, and then she was able to reach out to me. But it was a sequence of events that of me starting off with, for my portion of it, starting off having a neurological shift, which cascaded into all of the things that were necessary in order for this modality to be birthed.
It's so true. There's so many things that had to come together for this. And I want to say this, Bill and I are not doctors. We're not scientists. We're going to talk a lot about neurology today. We're not neurologists. We don't even play doctors on TV. I mean, rarely. We really do. But what we are is researchers, avid researchers who don't let go of any of the ideas that we think might help people create change. So for me, I've sort of always been this way. Bill was in hiding. I was in hiding in a different way. I could see things that other people couldn't see, people that other people didn't know were there, know things that people, didn't think I should know. As a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, literally a little kid, people would ask me a question, and I'd think, why isn't a grown-up, why are they asking me this? Well, then I knew the answer and I told them. But what I realized right around that 4 or 5-year-old age was that was very frightening to people, especially my parents. So I learned not to be that. Don't be that. But here's a secret, you guys. If you're hiding this about yourself, who you really are, everybody already knows. Sure, you're not hiding from anybody. And so I did everything I could in my life not to be that. Even though I was still the person that had the sign on my forehead that said, just, what do you need? What do you need to shift your life? Ask me. I'll tell you, right? I'd find myself in places waiting for the person I knew who would ask me a question. I'd never see him again, never seen him before. They'd ask me the random question, I'd say, and I'd go. But I did all kinds of things. I became an entrepreneur when I was 14 years old, the first time I sewed purses. I was a makeup artist, an image consultant for a while. I was a YouTube personality for a little bit. I told you I was a commercial cake decorator and commercial cake decorating instructor. And then we owned car dealerships. I was the CEO and owner of a car dealership, sales trainer, all that kind of thing. And even in those businesses, I was still coaching my salespeople, changing their neurological patterns without them knowing that that's what I was doing. But then the world blew up. And this $10 million a year business absolutely collapsed. Just collapsed. I mean, it was traumatic. I say that it chewed me up and spit me out. And so right after that, I'm like, okay, all right, universe, I get it. I got the message. So I started to do some things that were more of who I knew I was supposed to be, which is somebody helping to change the planet, somebody helping people as individuals and as groups. So I started learning neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, if any of you are familiar with it. But one of the first interesting shifts that happened was I was interested in this modality because guess why? It was still kind of sciencey. It wasn't all that woo-woo. You could affect change, but, I didn't have to give you a psychic reading. By the way, how people know, when I was in high school and we would have fairs every year, 3 guesses what they made me be. The fortune teller. Telling you, people know, right? But I still wasn't ready. So this NLP training, NLP is a million things, but this one was focused in brain remapping, just by coincidence. At the exact same time, my parents came down with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's at the exact same time. So I had to drive 7 hours to Seattle and back, and when I did, I listened to everything I could on Audible, because I was driving, about neurology. That's what I mean about researching. Everything I could learn about how the body could change the brain and how the brain could change the body. Everything that I could digest about that time. So I also made another decision that I wanted people in my life who I could talk to about these juicy conversations. I wanted to talk to people who knew who I really was, right? Big change, big neurological shift. So my friend and I, we decided to bring speakers in locally to kind of teach our healer circle. We'd created Healer Circle. And Gaia was new, and I saw Gaia, and there was Bill. And I thought, oh, he's not selling anything. And that is a really interesting little process that you guys can see on Gaia, by the way. It's called
A simple profound method of healing.
Of healing. Yeah, you can watch it and learn it. But I thought, okay, this is something that would be great to bring to a group. I liked it. So I ring up Bill, never have reached out to any other person on Gaia before, and said, hey, you want to come? And he said, sure. So I said, oh, give me your website and all that kind of thing, and I'll promote you. He didn't have a website. That was our first business that happened together. If he had a website, if it was all put together, what would there have been for me to do? I would have invited him. We would have had him speak, and that would have been the end. But you can see how things shift. And they're all based on shifts that we made internally. I had to become who I was intended to be, and so did Bill, for everything to start to fall in line. So it's a really interesting thing that you have to start to make your agreements. We've all made our agreements, but they have to be a change that's not here. It's a whole body change. It's a thing that starts to change the planet.
So there was I guess, for us, we're the tinkerers, Liz and myself, we have a natural curiosity. And this is a great example. I love that picture. So we knew certain things. We knew that in order to affect change in the nervous system, that the brain, we had to occupy different parts of the brain and get information flowing. And so the idea came, was to make a three-dimensional object. A three-dimensional object is recognized where it is in time and space. That's the right side of the brain. The left side of the brain recognizes colors and symbols. And these are important because not the Mandela, but the Mandala, I had known that there was an actual impact for certain people on their nervous system. So other things that we knew about cross-body movement. Cross-body would actually force information across the corpus callosum. So the idea was basically conceived, and I had my wife go 3D print, not 3D print, but you could actually buy some paper that goes through the printer and you can print out fabric. So my wife printed it all out and we sewed it all up, stuffed it with some cotton. And I was like, I need a victim. I need somebody out there that's just smart enough or stupid enough to trust me. And there, the phone call comes in. A friend of mine, Chris, who I've known since we were 18, about 5 years ago. And anyway, okay, all right. So yeah, back when I had hair. So he says, I need a ride to the airport on Saturday, whatever. I said, oh, no problem, I'll take you, but got to trade. You be my victim on this, experiment, and then I'll give you a ride to the airport. He says, cool. I go out there, and I got this little, as you can see, it's very light. He said, I wanted this to go off well, where there wasn't an objection. So I said, I've known this guy forever. Want you to, if you could, just focus on the biggest problem in your life. I knew you had a problem, but I don't want you to tell me about it. Don't say a word to me about it, but keep your concentration on the sensation you have around this problem. There's a sensation in your body. So what we ended up doing was just having him to we threw the ball and left and right, say the color you see, orange, green, yellow, blue, and I just stay in it. About a minute and a half, 2 minutes in, his belly button, he's like, my belly button's hot. And he's sweating profusely. We're throwing this little ball. And his shirt is drenched, like immediately. And a hot belly button, I don't know, never heard of that before. Hot belly button. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of laughing to myself. Just focus on it. Keep stay in the problem. A couple minutes later, he's like, ugh, I'm having a heart attack. I think my heart. I was like, no, you're not. And he was like, my heart. Just focus on it. Say the color. A couple minutes later, he starts choking. He's like, I can't breathe. And I was like, how's your heart? Because I was kind of like doing 911, not 911. I was like, I was taking a risk on this one. So anyways, his heart's fine. I can't breathe. Couple minutes later, he's like, my head. His throat's cleared out in his head, and then the top of his head, boom, gone. And I was like, wow. I said, what's going on? We get in the car, driving to the airport, and he's kind of quiet. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know, but that weird feeling went through my body. And I said, well, how do you feel about the big problem? He says, I can't feel it. I cannot feel anything about it. It's the weirdest thing. I can't even conceive of it anymore. And that dropped him off at the airport, and I'm like, that was weird. So I end up, later on, we now know I was basically watching a neurological pattern that was going through his body, his nervous system releasing this or processing it, whatever you want to call it. But this whole thing, it's super significant, which I learned about 6 months later. 6 months later, the wife comes over to the house and they're there and they're telling me this story. We bought 2 houses in Kanab, Utah, and they're cash flowing like on close. We built out part of our garage system and turned it into a rental, and we're making thousands a month on that. We started a bee business. We're making money on that. She was like, we're making money all over the place. We're paying off all of our mortgages and everything. And she said, all this happened immediately after the session that you and Chris did. And I was like, huh. Now, by the way, these people I've known them all my life, poverty conscious. At one point, he was homeless, living under a bridge. That's just him. But here, he basically said, I said, well, Chris, what was that about? And he said, I'm coming up on retirement. And by the way, he had a great job, defense contractor, great job, making a lot of money, enough where he had a whole family and living in a house and all the things. But what happened is that he felt that his retirement plan, the only possibility for him was to sell the house, buy a trailer, get a plot of land out in the desert, somewhere far away from people, and just be, tumbleweeds, blowing wind, whiskey, just kind of that methamphetamine desert lifestyle. Everybody knows. And it is like, so that was it. And he said, yeah, that was my plan. Now we know today, it's been several years ago since this happened. And he's now in a position where I have more money that I could spend every month. And he's retired, fully retired. He retired early after that, by the way. So this was amazing, just an amazing first story. We know that it went through his system. it affected the field of potential around him. And all of life changed.
It's like, you guys know that movie? It's Burt Reynolds, and there's a gorilla or a monkey, and he says, "Left turn, Clyde." Do you guys know this movie? Maybe I have it all mixed up. But it was like a left turn in his life from something moving through his system. So I'm thinking this might be a year later in time. There's a story that happens in my office. But before that happens, we have a little clip of our friend Bruce Lipton, I don't know him personally, that may explain how some of this is happening.
We were programmed to believe that our thoughts are contained in our head. That if I have a thought, it's just for me, not for anybody else. It's inside and it's working through me. And now I want to tell you about a new technology. It's not electroencephalograph, it's called magnetoencephalograph. I say, what's unique about that? Your thoughts are not contained in your head. Your thoughts are broadcast to the field just like a radio broadcast. Each of us is broadcasting. If you get enough people to have the same thought, that broadcast is amplified. Each of us has a small power, but if you put 1,000 people with the same thought, 10,000, 100,000 people with the same thought, you are broadcasting a most powerful thought, not just in your body, but out in the field. I say your energy is in the field, the thought is in the field.
But as we can see, things starting, I don't know how long ago, Cynthia probably knows this, but they started to recognize through electronics that you could measure thoughts and feelings outside the body. So this next story happens in my office, and a woman comes in and she's complaining about her husband. I mean, who knew? Nobody complains about their husband, right? Kind of a typical thing. And in some situations in her life were not going well. And as it happens, as things move through your neurological system, your body holds all of these stories. And so you'll sort of move through your whole life. We start here, but somehow you end up over there in the session. So briefly in this session, we talked about her mother. And so the session ends, and, she feels better about her husband and different things in her life, but she goes home. The drive is maybe 10 minutes. She walks through the door, and the landline is ringing. Not the cell phone, but the landline. So she doesn't know who it is. Picks it up, and it's her mom. Now, a little backstory on her mom. Her mom was a career military woman. Her feeling was buck up and get over it, whatever it is. But my client had felt like her mom had made a lot of decisions, let's say, that really negatively affected her. She'd married 2 Larrys. I don't know why that's significant, but seemed like it was. And both had abused herself and her sister. And she talked about her mom, she talked to her mom about this, and her mom's like, get over it. Get on with your life. I did my best. So 3,000 miles away, her mom is literally on the other side of the country, 10 minutes after a session. She walks through the door, the phone rings, and it's her mom. And her mom leads with, hey, I was thinking about you. And something I just realized? That my decisions may have affected your life negatively, and I'm sorry. So for my client, she's just stood there with her mouth open like, what do I do next? Because never in her life had she imagined, at least out loud, that this would happen. But what had happened during the session is during those few minutes that we were working around her mom, her neural pattern, her perspective of life changed. And that somehow affected her mother 3,000 miles away. She got the signal. The pattern between them changed very rapidly. One timeline collapsed in which her mom didn't care, and the other became available. And her mom said, I'm sorry. I'd like to have a different relationship with you. Pretty fascinating, right? So this really reinforced our thoughts that not only are we changing the patterns in the body, the trauma, the pain, the lifestyle, life story, but it's changing the field. It's changing the world around itself once there's a big enough change, which is interesting if you think about it. Because for this woman, her life had been on autopilot. This was the truth of her life about her mom. And it turns out that so much of our life is on autopilot. In fact, more than we could ever imagine, right, Bill?
It really is. The study shows 95% of everything that's going on in your life is your subconscious. Everybody's heard this before, that your life is really a reflection of what's going on in your subconscious. There's a study done at Duke University that 45%, this is a scientific study, 45% of everything you've got going on in your day is habitual. That whatever is happening. And if you look at your own life, is it, okay, I get a cup of coffee and I put the almond cream thing in the, I go to this place, I drive to that. So this is simply a reality and a reflection of what's going on in our subconscious. Many of you know the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. He also says that 90 to 95% of what's going on is your subconscious, and it is repetitive. There's also numerous studies out there done that show that not only are these feelings repetitive, but they're predominantly negative. So there is something, obviously, that's why we're here. There's something you can do about that. But these patterns are in our life and can be changed. And the question is, how? How does this entire system work? And how can it be changed?
Well, and the bigger question is, how does it change the environment around you? How does it create a Mandela effect or a reality shift? So we've broken down into 3 areas. And the first area is the mind-body. It's this pattern that happens between the mind and the body. And these habits that happen 95 times or 95% of the day, they create these really well-worn grooves in our neural pattern. Has anybody seen, in Malta, there's these cart ruts that go down into the sea? Has anybody seen this? And they're like this deep. The carts kept going the same way. Our nervous systems are similar to that. They'll create these well-worn patterns. And every time the pattern runs, the thought, the feeling, the feeling, the thought, the feeling, the feeling, the thought, it gets deeper. But there's something more about this. These are electromagnetic, hormonal, and chemical signals that run between the brain and the body all day long. And they don't just run like on the vagus nerve. They're not just seen here. They literally can go all the way down to the little cell in your big toe. We've had lots of people with their whole life trauma, everything that kept them stuck, the pain was in their big toe. So it's throughout the whole body, but they're cycling. Cyclical electricity creates a what? Cynthia. A field. A field. We know this because of Nikola Tesla's work. We know that cycling electricity creates a field greater and greater and greater. And we have so much power in our bodies, so much energy. If you think about one atom in our body could create an atom bomb, you realize how much power we have. So our bodies become massive energy projectors. I guess that's a good way to say it. A massive energy projector. So what else is there, Bill? What are the electromagnetic?
There's I'll get to it in a second. There's ways that scientifically we now know that this whole field of potential is a very real thing. But what beyond, as to further comment on what Liz is saying, there's significant work that has been done by Dr. Antonio Damasio at USC. He is a psychologist and neurologist as well. And the gift that he's given the world is that he figured out that it is the feeling that comes first. Everybody here, I was taught, control your thoughts, Bill. You got to control your thoughts. Well, actually, what it is we have a feeling and we think a thought equal to that feeling. and that's generating that field. And of course, if you look at your life, don't you have about the same feelings? You feel about the same from day to day? There's a little up, a little down, but you're all you. So anyway, the thing with this, the electromagnetic field, is it's measurable. Significant work's been done on this by the HeartMath Institute. They utilize an EMF meter, which will actually measure the electronic field that's generated by your heart outside of your body, 6 to 8 feet around. Not only can they detect the electronic signal, but they can detect its coherence, the coherence between the heart and the head. This has significant health benefits when there is coherence. Now, what you can also do is you can measure the greater field outside of the body, like the field of your thoughts. It's weaker than what your heart will generate. There's something else, and that something else is the magnetocephalography. Like was discussed before, the sensors are outside your head. It's a superconducting quantum interference device. That's what those sensors are. They can detect outside of your head the electrical charge, and that can be actually mapped to your brain. What kind of frequency and where is it? Now the interesting thing here is that this is important, that you know that this is actually real. This is not only the electrical charge, but information. Your nervous system is the carrier of an electrical charge. That's by definition what it is. Guess what else goes on that electrical charge? Information. So they're picking up out in the field. Now, with this mapping, there's actually a wonderful clip we have on dreams that you can actually print out a dream today on a picture of it. There's technology out there. We have that clip.
We already at the University of California at Berkeley been able to put the human brain into an MRI machine. You feed that into a computer. Once you know the blood flow at thousands of points on the human brain, computer prints out a picture of what you are thinking. Now, I've seen these pictures. They're not very clear, but the very fact that we can extract a picture from a living brain is incredible.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's pretty fascinating.
It's fascinating stuff. And even when you go to sleep, the machine keeps on going and will eventually print out your dream.
Whoa.
Now, we've seen pictures of the dreams. They're not very good yet, but that's just a matter of time. The number of pixels that we have is about 20,000 pixels of the human brain. In the future, we'll have millions of pixels of the human brain to have a much finer resolution of your dream.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Well, here is the thing that we don't have the evidence of, but I'm going to tell you about. And it's, everybody here has heard of Edgar Mitchell. I think he was the sixth man to walk on the moon, something like that. He started the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and he passed away, I don't know, maybe 2015, 16, something like that. So I'm on YouTube, and I see the last interview for Edgar Mitchell. And it was a young kid interviewing him. And Edgar was just so matter of fact. He's a scientist. And he was telling the kid, hey, well, we now have the technology to read the field around a person and tell everything that ever happened in their life. I was like, what? What did he just say? There's technology that can read the field around you and tell every experience from your entire life. Remember what I said about the magnetic field, the electronic field, and information? Well, it's actually there. And there's technology to read it. Now, DARPA obviously is 20 years ahead of what's known today. We know this. That's a whole topic in and of itself. You can see this technology right here with the dream. But of course, that's true. And of course, that video got taken down. I don't know if anybody else here saw that video, but it's come up and down a few times off YouTube. I never expect to see it again. If you see it, send it to me. Would love to.
So there's the third place that you can, that's involved in creating these Mandela effects, the personal ones, the ones that change the field. And it really is the morphic field. It's the field of potential combined with the morphic field. Now, Rupert Sheldrake, we have a clip, but we'll avoid it for now, talks about how there is a field around every cell, around every individual cell, around every animal, around everything that seems to communicate with each other. Ours happens to be this field of a potential around the body. And that field of potential seems to be interacting directly with the greater field. Lynn McTaggart told us about this. Rupert Sheldrake told us about this. Napoleon Hill told us about this, the thinking stuff of the universe. So to end this, we want you to have a very quick experience of this. What we know is that these neurological patterns, the biggest traumas that we had in our life, our dreams and our wishes, they actually extend outside of our body in this field of potential around us. So if you would, just think about that thing that's on your mind all the time, whatever it is, just that thing that's constantly on your mind. Everybody have one? Just raise your hand really quickly. That thing that's on your mind all the time. And imagine that you and I are sitting across from coffee, just chatting, but just us girls. And you're talking to me about this thing. And you might gesture for it. Like, Liz, it's my dream to have that villa in Italy. Also autobiographical. Reach out right now and gesture to it. Reach out around your body and gesture to it. I was thinking about that thing, or, my mom always does this. Yeah. Continue to reach out. I want you to actually feel that place. Notice where your eyes go. And notice if it feels like, dang it, if you didn't know better, maybe there's something there. It feels like cobwebs. It feels like a mass. It feels spongy. Put your hand under it. And as you feel under it, it might get bigger. Notice it. Notice if there's a weight there, a mass. This is an eyes open thing, you guys. This isn't with your eyes closed. We're not imagining. Internal, you're going to go with your eyes closed. External, you're actually going to go to the place in your brain that holds one end of that neural pattern. Now, notice your physical body. Where are you active? It's really familiar. You're active. You feel it. Maybe your heart starts to race a little. And put your eyes there. Look at that thing. Feel into the middle of it. Notice if it gets bigger, if there's more mass. Is that interesting to anybody? Did you know that they would be right out here? Now imagine if your biggest trauma is right out here and the spouse walks up and smacks into it, they feel it too. Or that beautiful dream in your life, the minute you walk into it, it, your body gets tingles, you feel that. This is what we're going to be teaching on Sunday. We're going to be teaching how to recognize the patterns in your field and in your body, how to collapse the ones you don't want, and how to make the ones that you do want much, much larger. How to bring those back into the body and create a much bigger signal that will interact with the morphic field, with the greater field, and start to change your life intentionally. So we want to thank you guys so much for spending this time with us. We didn't get to everything. It's such a big story, but we do hope you'll join us on Sunday to learn more about it and to actually physically have the experience. Bill and I believe it will be life-changing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Liz Larson and Bill McKenna.
So what I wanted to ask Liz, you briefly said something about storing all the pain in the big toe. Would you please talk more about this? Because I have no pain in any way, shape, or form apart from in one big toe.
One big toe. You're the person.
Yeah.
Okay. So the body tends to store memory in places in our body so that we can react to that memory because our body sees it as a threat. It's a fight or flight pattern. So for every person, it's different. You know, some people, it might be a pain in the top of their head. Some people, you know, it's in the body along the chakras, you know, the bigger places you'd imagine. But for others, the body just happens to store it in the toe. So what happens is with our work, we have you focus your full attention on that pain. Don't push it away. Let it be there. But we also find the other end of that neural pattern. Where does it exist in the brain? We find it through eye position. Our eyes actually access the files of our brain. It's like the Dewey Decimal System for those of us old enough to remember the Dewey Decimal System. But when you can find the 2 points, you can collapse the pattern. And what happens is the pain leaves instantly. It's just gone because the body doesn't really need to send that signal anymore.
No.
It's corrected itself. It's like, oh, that's a waste of energy. Okay, no thank you. Once that's released, then the energy and its actual physical voltage goes into that part of the body. And we can show that on Sunday. We were supposed to show it today, but we'll show it on Sunday what it actually looks like, the voltage. That is now spread throughout the body for healing, thinking, dreaming, loving, all of it. Your voltage actually increases. So that's a big neural pattern for you. And hopefully on Sunday, we'll get rid of that for you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Liz Larson and Bill McKenna.
Thank you. Thank you.